see what we got here today. Good morning. Let's see. What are we going to do today for a pose? Let's see, working on a little pose over here. Alright, what are we doing this morning? Oof. Let's see, what are we doing here? Good morning, everybody. Maybe I'll draw some. I don't know. Let's see, I think if I bring this up higher. Alright, we'll go with that. Good morning, everybody. Pop it in. set up a little punchy pose here or something. Oh yeah, he's good. He has a YouTube. I don't. He used to do more live streams, but I guess he hasn't really done them much lately. But you bring on like other artists and things, have them do demos and explain to them how to do certain things. Um, yeah, but yeah, I really like these little figures. I think they're great. You know. Um, yeah, but yeah, he's great. I think he's another one of those guys that basically doesn't do interiors anymore, which I always find, depressing. Yeah, I think a lot of them, I think it's well, I think doing a comic is a lot of work, right? And then they suddenly get into like the way they're especially the big companies have all these like multiple covers now, and so they get probably paid as much doing a couple of covers every month as they do for doing a 20 some odd page comic book. Um, but so I get it. I'm not. I understand the rationale. It just is kind of depressing because like, oh, there's this amazing artist and now they don't. They're really great storytellers and now they don't tell any stories anymore. But so but I also kind of think that they would want to do it if they were making better comics, right? So if the comics were doing, telling really great stories that sold like they did when I first started, looking at comics in the early '90s. Um, all the residuals and things that people would get off of their the sales, that would be a big deal, right? But yeah, well, I think ever since the '90s image thing, I also think a lot of these kind of major publishers have been unwilling to invest in their artists because I think ultimately, they, as much as like the writers like to think they're important, like the artist is way more important to the success of any financial success of a comic book. Yeah. But I think if they wanted things to sell, they just have to bring in periodically new talent that's really amazing. As they lose the old ones, they can bring in the new ones. But they, it's but it's hard because for them because think they invest a lot in somebody and then they take off. But yeah, I haven't read those. I heard like people were liking the initial ones of them. I know, it seemed like that was the story out there. Yeah, Hickman's always kind of been this big brain guy. I remember his Infinity series. He had all these really great artists. I'm trying to read them like, why do we care about what's happening here? Like, how is it interesting? I mean, it's a big like world-ending event, but it's like I don't know. It seems like they tend to do like these big world things, but it doesn't really matter in the sense like it doesn't seem like the characters really care about what's going on, or the impact on them is kind of minimal in terms of like what it does to them, or what their intentions are. So that's what I noticed is like even in the movies, right? So there's some kind of cataclysmic thing going on, but it's like it's going to work out. Yeah, it's like I want to like it, like it feels like I should, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I think part of it too is because it's going to work out because it's serialized and these are popular characters that they're not going to get rid of. Um, they I think it really has to do with how whatever the situation is, how it affects the characters. So like, how does it change them Do they have to, consider making moral compromises? Um, that's the kind of thing that I think makes those stories more compelling or interesting. You know, rather than whatever blue laser is going up into the sky. And um, yeah, well, it's like the this new Snyder Batman thing that they're doing, right? It's really just a ploy for them they're trying to find a Batman that doesn't they can keep kind of for the next 100 years as a copyright safe version. I think is really what they're in chasing. But you read it, it just feels kind of silly, because they're trying to take the tropes of Batman and like not really do them. Yeah, I don't know. Hello over there on Kick. Yeah, but yeah, it just feels really silly. Like the whole, he's like driving a giant dump truck through the city. Somehow he hides it again. You know, he's he's the only person in the entire city that's got his build. So it seems like he would kind of stick out in a crowd if anyone spent 2 seconds thinking about it. And then like all of his high school friends are the League of Villains from the old series, from the original series, which is one of those little coinkydink things. I'm kind of mixed on Scott Snyder as well, just historically. Like, he had that Dandelion character or something, and when Gotham got flooded out or whatever, I know he did the Court of Owls thing, but I always thought that was an odd one, just because you would think, you know, if there was some kind of big influential conspiracy, influencing the city for generations, that would have been something Batman would have sussed out a long time ago. You know. Seems to me, anyway. I you know. It could. It just it would have been fine like if it was like I don't know, Shadowhawk or something. But with Batman, it just didn't work because he's kind of been there for a while, and he would have thought he would have picked up on like secret hibernating assassins in the city, a long time ago. Yeah, so maybe there's some like amazing run that I missed, but I know people. I mean, I read the Court of Owls. I have it on. I bought it on Comixology a long time ago, but and I like I like Greg Capullo, of course, on there. He's great. Um, though he always gives everybody like pretty eyes, which I always thought was a little strange. Like really pretty eyelashes on everybody. Um, it came with a mask, huh? I bought a ton of stuff on Comixology back then, mostly because I was living in Hong Kong, so kind of getting physical stuff was always a little bit of a concern. A, it's more expensive. B, um, I was always thinking about having to take it back with me. So I'm like, because I knew I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life there. That was a foregone conclusion for me. But and so I was always kind of hesitant to invest in physical media over there unless it was something local and unique, and that was still pretty rare. Um, and then Comixology would have those big sales, right? So it'd be like a bundle of this series or you know this bundle of graphic novels or something like that periodically. But I think over like a 3 or 4 year period while they were really active, I think I spent like a few $1,000s on that stuff. So I've got a huge library. A lot of it's stuff I already owned too. So it's like older X-Men or whatever. Um, but so let's see. Music time. Let's go with that, I guess. Yeah. So I've never. But ever since they are bought by Amazon, it's been kind of a gradual decrease. I'm not even convinced. I'm sure I know why Amazon bought them, other than they were just like curious to see what would happen. Because they basically just folded it into everything else eventually, which is what Amazon does. because whatever profits they are making are pretty nominal compared to what Amazon gets from their web services and all that. So I guess that should go up a little bit with the arm raised back. Shorten that in. Up. Over. So who knows, right? It is interesting to listen to people like David Finch talk about their work and things like that, because it's interesting what he doesn't do. Like, he doesn't like working with nibs. I think he uses mostly microns, which I thought was interesting. That's weird. Why are they missing those ones? Which ones were those? 97 and 99. Is there a particular event or something in there? So I think I bought some of the Spider-Man stuff on Comixology, but I was never like an avid Spider-Man reader growing up. I was getting more X-Men, and then switching over to the Image guys when that happened. I mean, you only had so much to spend. I think the handful of I have that crossover Spider-Man did with X-Force. And then, my mom bought me some random issue of Spider-Man when I was sick, because she went to the comic book shop. She's like, oh, I don't know what he wants when he's sick. Brave of her to go in though. That's big mom deal thing to wander into a comic book store. May have been the only time she's ever been in them. Actually, the Spider-Man series I did collect was Spider-Man 2099. What's his face drawing it? I can't remember his name. It's really great. I just remember really loving the art in there. The how dynamic it was and gestural, and the original one. Yeah, Rick Leonardi. Yeah, foil cover and everything on that. I think it kind of didn't do that well eventually. A lot of these stories, they really think out they do a really strong kind of origin story, and then it's like, well, now what? I think that's one of the bigger problems with any kind of serialized work is kind of what do you do next? I think that older TV shows, because they were based on serialized events, because they couldn't rely on anybody seeing everything. But all right, what can we give her for an outfit now that we've got it roughed in? Let's see, see what we got in my urban fashion kit here. Yeah, that could be interesting, the coat like that. A little twist. Yeah, well, it's when they have that they kind of recycle content, right? I thought it's interesting, that most of the MCU stuff is based around the Ultimates series, right? Like the way the characters are and act. It seems like it's more kind of Ultimates based rather than original series based. To me, at least. Yeah, I think that was the only. I think I might have picked up I think wasn't there like an X-Men 2099? I think I might have picked up that. Like the first issue or something. I remember there was some other. I think there was like some other ones. At least one other one that I picked up, but I don't remember exactly. It's been a long time. Oh yeah. So I remember the crossover they had with Wildstorm. Where the radioactive guy and the what's her face, was it Void? Had a little soiree in the middle of the interdimensional planes and birthed a fused universe or something. It's a classic case for definitely keeping protection on hand, right? But I think a lot of the Image guys, they kind of suffered from that too, because they didn't have like a real strong through line for a lot of their stories once they got past who the origins were. It's like, why do we care about them now? I think like a lot of the Wildstorm stuff is just connecting all the Team 7 stuff up with people, and then the Wildcats alien stuff. And then once the Wildcats went to the alien planet, just kind of like fell apart. It's like, oh, that's what's going on? Yeah, whatever. Or once you figured out who everybody's parents were in with Gen 13 or whatever, it's like, oh, okay, now what? What are you gonna do with this story? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's right, because it was Chapel originally that murdered him. I wonder with all this stuff with Neil Gaiman if he wants to try and get Angel back, because they have her over in Marvel, but it's like Thor's sister or something like that. But I don't think that really has gone anywhere. Oh yeah. Um, so I know Todd did like a big relaunch of Spawn stuff recently, right? So I wonder how that affects what's going on. I really should wander in the comic book shop and like pick up some stuff. I know like the Ghost Machine stuff is supposed to be really good. I've seen some of the art, online. It's got really, was it Jason Fabok and some of the other like artists they're doing are like really really good. Um, but I think at least of all of them, I think Todd had like the character story that had the most lasting effect. Like it seemed like there was an ongoing thing you could do with that. I don't know that he was that good of a writer, but you know, and it was disappointing when Greg Capullo came on to Spawn. It was like, well, you know, he's good, but he's not, Todd. um, there's a comic book shop like just down the street from me. I should wander in and see. Maybe try and get caught up on some of the Ghost Machine stuff. So really, just mostly just buy graphic novels these days, which I probably said before, but um, yeah. So it's like I remember when he took over after Liefeld on X Force, and that was that was also just kind of disappointing, just because there was so much kind of frenetic energy in Liefeld's stuff. Despite whatever the weaknesses his art has, there was just all this energy in there all the time, which is part of what made people like his work so much, made him popular. I think people kind of forget that about him, that he had all this dynamic energy going on, in spite of whatever errors there were in it. It was always super gestural and dynamic. The little hairy lines kind of pointing at everything. He was only 20 years old when he was doing those, which is like, or younger, just kind of shocking to a certain degree. Looking back now, so I look at how long it's taken me to get good at certain things, and I should be more impressed with that. Um, but yeah, because Capullo certainly doesn't have that. Didn't back then have that same kind of energy level that you'd see with the other ones. Yeah. Oh, did my internet go out? Let's find out in a second here. That's doing okay. Music just started spinning, so error occurred. Please try again later. Maybe it's just YouTube. Let's see what's going on here with the music. Connect to the internet. Seems like I'm okay on the streaming side. It's like my PC just disconnected or something. No Wi-Fi networks detected. Just on the PC though. There it goes. That was weird. Nothing else happened. It's just the PC internet went out. That's odd. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of. Yeah, it was just interesting to watch kind of that transition happen with the Marvel to Image stuff, just because I'd be reading a comic book that I really liked, X-Men or whatever, and all of a sudden they were gone. It's like, where did they go? I mean, I saw the the announcements in Wizard and everything, but it's still kind of like where did they go? I was looking at that, and then suddenly it's gone. And the people that replaced them, they're good, but they weren't. It wasn't ever quite the same. My eraser. One problem I have with this upper facing desk is if I drop stuff, it's a long way down. It was funny, it's interesting kind of, professors kind of thinking out loud I met up with this professor. He's doing this kind of religion and it's like historical, not so much religion, but like spiritual traditions and figurative art kind of class thing. And so he's got like this professor who specializes in that subject historically, kind of co-teaching a class with him. And anyway, I came in because we're doing this curriculum kind of rewrite of the whole school. Well, at least the parts that I'm involved with, kind of doing this whole rewrite thing. And he's saying, he says we were talking today about how there shouldn't be any like limits. We shouldn't judge an artist necessarily by the content they produce. That if they're making these horrible, violent images or gross things, like it's not necessarily a comment on their character. It's more of like they're trying to have a discussion about something or whatever. And so he's like, any subject should be open to art. And he's a newly minted father. And so I was like, well, what about the CP stuff? Like, if you make explicit paintings of that, like, what do we think about that? And he's like, oh. I'm like, you gotta think more than one step ahead with any of these things. It's like what it is, I told a story, because that's always a better way of making your point. And I was at this other school once, and a student who would get, commissions off of Twitter or whatever, so I didn't say that. What I said was, I had this student once, says, well, I had this student once, and this is in response to them saying, any subject's okay, I was like, well, she would get these commissions off of Twitter, and she asked me in class once that she got one recently, and she wanted to know if it was okay to do. That was like a CP related subject, an illustration of that, and that's actually legal to do, is to do illustrations, because you're not technically, you're not in the legal sense hurting anybody. You're still a creep that probably needs to be dealt with, but. But I kind of looked at it, I was quite shocked because I'd never even considered the question before. But I was saying, so what about that? What if that's the commission they want? Explicit this and that. Do we judge the artist for that? And but his face was just like, oh, yeah, I guess that's a line we hadn't considered. And I said, there's always a line. You just have to decide where it's at. To say that there shouldn't be one or there isn't one is, I'm pretty sure I would get the same reaction if they're, saying, well, what about someone doing a commission of Trump showing him hanging out with a happy family in a grateful America or something like that. I probably would get a similar response as a hypothetical, but an actual anecdotal event is a little more impactful. So just saying, yeah. So, yeah, if I just said I think otherwise, it would just be kind of reductio ad absurdum, just taking things to an extreme degree. By pointing out a real thing like that, saying, well, what about this? This is a real thing. And I was like, well, then you would go look at, say, some old Caravaggio paintings of Cupid, and those were clearly done as, the CP pieces for some, clergy or aristocrat or whatever. That's what it's for, and yet we put that up in a museum. We don't think about it necessarily being that, but that's what it was. When you go look at it in the museum, there's a painting of him as a young man being bit by a lizard, and it's pretty explicit, allegorical painting. Probably referencing the own abuse he had suffered as a child. And I was like, we look at the Greek philosophers. We still study them, in spite of the fact that a lot of their literature, in terms of relationships, has to do with things we would not smile upon these days. Sorry about that. So, uncomfortable subjects, but it's well, where do we draw the line? And, you got to draw it somewhere. Everybody does, even if you think you don't. You probably do. Yes, I'm always pretty good at finding those kinds of situations. The kind of push back a little bit at people's presumptions about their open-mindedness. I definitely, with the whole, the individuals who are into those subjects, I do think they are suffering from a mental illness, and we need to find a way to deal with that. It's I don't think it's just they're necessarily evil incarnate. If they do something, that's got to be dealt with properly. But I do think there are some people that are just built that way. I don't think it gives them any right to hurt anybody or do bad things, but I think we do need to figure out a way to deal with that kind of mental illness. It's like psychopaths, right? It's a medical problem. Like, it's pretty well established that we know why or what's causing it, and that it's definitely medical. Like, it's built into their brain structure, so it's not really their fault that they're psychopaths. The trick is, keeping them from doing harm to other people. So I think they estimate something like, was it 10% of the population or 5% of the population have psychopathy to one degree or another. Sociopathy is a little bit different because it's not really medical, it's conditioning, but as far as I understand. But with psychopaths and other similar kinds of harmful mental illnesses like those, it's I think there's something that's got to be figured out to actually help those people, and while also not putting the rest of us in danger. I don't know what that is because that's outside of my experience, but yeah, fun stuff, right? But yeah, finding that line, that's it's interesting to see where people will draw that, where they think they're drawing it. I think where they believe they're being open-minded. It's like there's this painter we both studied with. A big reason we went to this grad school is to study with this guy. But he has these paintings of his son, who's got, I don't think it's Down syndrome. I know he had like hydrocephalus as a baby, which caused problems. But I don't think he has Down. He's got some other kind of issue. But he has these images he did in like the early 90s, late 80s, of his son kind of lying in a bed, and he's nude, like 9-10 years oldish looking. And there's like an old man like lying there next to him in this like weird dirty room. And I don't think there's necessarily any evil intent, but it certainly could be read that way. It's a terrifying painting, nonetheless, but that's part of what I thought was interesting about the painter overall, is he kind of had this kind of deeper kind of psychological impact through how he would juxtapose, there's your artward, juxtapose imagery together, because he'd work in diptychs and triptychs, so sequences of 2 or 3 images. Vincent Desiderio. But hello over there on Kick with that very fancy name you got there. It was funny. I introduced my students to these. I normally just draw digitally in classes because it's easier to set up and do and put in front of everybody. But I brought in some traditional tools to show them technique artist Nico Marley does. And so I brought in this to sharpen my 2mm pencils, and they were like, "What is that?" I think one of them said they bought it but didn't know what it was when they bought it, which I thought was just kind of, funny. I'm like, yeah, it's a pencil sharpener. You stick it in there, you spin it around, sharpens it up. You can touch up the tip a little bit in here. I come in here and touch it up, and then it's got a little thing of foam here to clean off the pencil when you're done. So, yeah, they didn't know what it was, which I thought was interesting. I think Rick Remender started a new series. Got some of his big library editions here. The Low, which I thought was really good. The Deadly Class, which I liked a lot. I've got Tokyo Ghost. That's the that's the one they did with Sean Gordon Murphy. I really like those library editions too. Greg Tocchini doing Low. So you can tell when he switches over to digital at different points, which is always like, it's like, I'd rather have your ink washes and watercolor stuff going on rather than the digital. I can get you're in a hurry and everything, but Dr. Jones, you call him Doctor. Been trying to get my students I have some students who are kind of interested in storytelling visually, like storyboards and comics and that. I'm trying to get them to watch older movies, especially like Spielberg stuff, just because he was so good at blocking out scenes, and they don't even really know what that is. Yeah, no time for love, Dr. Jones. As they're escaping from the Kenobi Cafe, or the Obi-Wan Cafe. Nice little Easter egg there, right? But you call him Dr. Jones. I think it's funny that actor's kind of making a comeback recently. Like they're bringing him in for like different Disney products. I don't even know if he's really acted in the last 40 years or whatever, 30 years, until like the last couple years. But yeah, trying to get to watch these older movies because it's like you don't understand like how they're telling stories. Everything's really clear. Like you can see where they're at, what's going on, how everybody relates to each other, and it's like Spielberg makes it really obvious, or in any of the '80s movies do. You get your Ghostbusters. I got one of him to watch Ghostbusters. He was like, "Do people really treat each other like that back in the '80s?" And I was a little bit confused because I'm like, "Do people treat each other differently now?" He may have been talking about like the hitting on the, the student by Venkman or something like that, and being a bit of a horn dog. Well, there you go. Um, but I'm sure his IMDb says, I don't know what his real name is. I always thought it was Short Round because I knew him from that movie and from Goonies, and that was about it. Um, yeah, but they haven't seen a lot of like the '80s movies, which is wild because there's so much in there in terms of like learning good storytelling and explain showing things visually rather than verbally. Um, so you can see the nice establishing shots and close-ups and mediums, all in ways that show how characters and scenes all kind of relate. And well, you still get that in modern movies. There's the scenes are so short in movies these days. The cuts happen so fast, it's hard to, sometimes it's almost impossible to tell what's going on. I remember with the last Transformers movie I saw, I don't remember which one. It was like the Dark Side of the Moon or whatever it was called, something like that. I couldn't tell what was going on in that movie. It was like everyone's suddenly running down hallways screaming, everyone's yelling over here, and the shots are just cutting back and forth. You have no idea where you are or what's going on or who's relating to what. Um, Not that there weren't bad movies made in the past, but we know which ones are the good ones. It's like I always thought one of my favorite movies in terms of pacing was Fifth Element, which, by the way, the guy who was one of the main concept artists for that, he's been posting all of his stuff on Twitter recently from that movie, like all the cars and locations and guns and all the stuff that he designed. I forget his name, something Carlos something or something Carlos, but he's been all over Twitter posting his work from that movie. All markers and pencil and paint and all that stuff. He's not Sid Mead or anything, but it's still cool to see that. So that's always good. It's too bad there's never an art book for that. You'd think there would be with all the costumes and puppets and animatronics and all that, in addition to whatever visual development work was done. Seems like that would have been a great art book to have. The Art of the Fifth Element. But they never ask my opinion on these subjects for some reason. I go old Die Hard in Space. And poor Bruce Willis, right, making all those really terrible movies for a handful of years while his brain was melting. Family should have intervened a lot sooner than eventually people did. It became like too obvious to deny. It just seems like somebody should have stepped in and said, Bruce, you've made your mark. We like you. We love you. We're your family. It's time to stop. I think it was only after like the Red Letter Media people did kind of a big thing on recent Bruce Willis movies that they pulled back on it. I think they kind of blew that out into the public consciousness for people. Hello over there. Oh, it's a bot over on Twitch. Love those. Let me go over there and deal with that briefly. There you are. Let's see. Report. Spam. Next. Hello, thank you, appreciate that. Nick Ray, just dealing with a bot over on Twitch. All right. Yeah, I should probably finish up soon. I'm running a little over time here, but I've been talking a bunch. We got a guest artist coming to the university today, so I got that this afternoon, evening. Stop into a show for a bit, and I go to the lecture that all my students are supposed to go to, and then we got some website stuff I'm working on today. My brother's been kind of helping me out with some of the sales page aspects of it because he's a good internet marketer. And then it's like, you need to optimize all of your images. I'm like, I haven't done that in so long, but he's right. So it'll just take a couple hours to do all that, which is a pain. And then I'm working on actually a little guide as a lead magnet. So I have this kind of old demo I did that's a pretty good explanation of like my life drawing process that I teach. So I'm making a little PDF of that with some of my life drawings in it. It's like 10-12 pages long, which is actually kind of long for I think any kind of lead magnet. It'll have like the list of the 10 steps, and then it'll show kind of this digital drawing I did a long time ago. And kind of as a precursor for the upcoming course that I want to put together after I finish the other ones, but just trying to get all this front end stuff knocked out that I've neglected for a long time. It's not my favorite activity, kind of, writing sales copy. But I haven't been there in a while, Trout House. I've got like a ton of student work I've been injecting into the courses, also in the front pages, but into the relevant courses for everybody. Been going through all my Ringling student stuff and pulling out good projects from students to put in there. It was funny, during my last year there, I was starting to get projects from students that were better than my demo projects. I don't want to say necessarily the students were better than me, but in terms of like the project I'd put together for my demos, so I was starting to get examples from my students that were actually like really, really, really good. I got good ones before, but these were just like, they were like going beyond the expectations of the assignment. Which is always, nice to see. You kind of get the feeling that you've created something that the students learn a lot from, but also really want to do. And it's always hard to kind of find that balance, where you want to challenge them to do something they haven't done before, but also that's difficult, but also something that's going to kind of engage their interest and imagination for the duration of that project, and hopefully find use for it later on. But that's always the hard part. So a lot of professors, they tend to kind of just think students should be basically eating their vegetables, basically. Like, it's just hard to go through, it's unpleasant. I'm like, well, what if instead of thinking things like that way, what if the challenging quality of the project was something that they wanted to do, and you could put in the things that you feel are necessary as steps towards making that project happen, rather than just thinking about it in terms of suffering and punishment. Like, it's definitely challenging and hard, but that should definitely be a part of any kind of project you're going to learn from. But I really feel like if students see and experience the fact that I'm serving the project, or even I myself, or just the project itself serves their interests, then they'll do a lot to get those projects done on time. Like, they'll recognize, oh, teacher isn't just making me do this because it's unpleasant or challenging or whatever. They're making me do it because it helps me do the things I want to do. And that's something I don't hear enough from faculty, generally speaking, because they're definitely right. Like, students need to learn X, Y, and Z thing, but I think it can be presented in a way, putting together projects where it actually meets their perceived needs as far as they understand them. It's like, I think we ought to be teaching technical perspective, which is something I did at the last school I was at, and none of my students were targeting illustration specifically, but when I showed them how it was related to, say, lenses, which was definitely very relevant to a lot of things they're doing, because they're most of the motion designers, they're making kind of mini animations and mini films as part of their education. And so if you can present, say, learning technical perspective as understanding and seeing it from the inside of the lens, that's like that's a big deal for them. And it was a big deal for me too, because I'd never really thought about it that way. So that's always kind of one of the goals when I'm putting stuff together. It's not just to make whatever it is challenging, but making sure that it serves the students' interests. I don't think it's that hard to do. You just have to think about the things that you wanted to learn and why when you were a student, and that can definitely influence how you look at it. Like, well, if the teacher explained this and this to me as a student because it was relevant to me because of X, Y, and Z reason, then yeah, I would have gotten a lot more out of it. It's like a good example for my own education is art history. So I didn't really care all that much about art history until, or historical artists anyway, like old masters and things like that, until I was trying to learn to paint like them, and then they became more relevant to me. So understanding who they were and their backgrounds and why they painted things the way they did, not just for practical reasons, but philosophical ones, religious ones. Like kind of coming to that understanding helped me out a lot in terms of like seeing the history and its relevance to me. It's like that podcaster Dan Carlin does hardcore history. Actually, he just put out an episode. It's been like a couple of years since he's put one out. It takes a long time for him to do his podcast, but he likes context history in terms of the story of history, because that's what's relevant to most people, right? It's not whatever small little detail archaeologists really care about when they're working on their doctorates. That doesn't really impact people's decision makings or understandings of humanity. What's more impactful is the story. And that's it's a good lesson to take. For me, it's like, so I now understand a lot more about the collapse of the Roman Empire the collapse of the Roman Republic, because I understood, I was told the story and how it kind of all fit together, and suddenly it made more sense and was more relevant. But I think we're going to call it there. I've been going a little bit longer than intended. So where's my, where did I put my pencil at? It's not up there. It's got to be over here. It's rolled away or something, right? It is dark brown. I put it away. Look at that. Gotta never put anything away, right? So today is 25/02/14. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. So thanks for everybody that came in. I appreciate it. And we'll talk at you hopefully tomorrow first thing. Or maybe tonight.